When it comes to long manuscripts, word count is a symptom. It is not the disease. Yet almost every piece of advice out there treats it like the disease. Cut your adverbs, trim your filter words. Your second draft equals your first draft minus 10%. Cool. You did all that. You went from 140,000 words to 132,000 words. It took you 6 weeks, and your beta readers still say it drags in the middle. Agents will usually auto-reject a fantasy debut over about 130,000 words, sometimes even less than that. But they're not rejecting the length, they're rejecting what the length implies. Once you know what that is, your whole revision process changes. So today we're going to diagnose where your bloat actually lives in 5 specific fixable categories, and the 5th one is the one nobody warns you about because it's not in your manuscript at all. It's in your head. It's the reason you'll watch this video, read through this entire list, nod your head, and still not cut the scene that you know needs to go. I'll also give you the order to tackle them in because doing this backwards is why most overwriters give up halfway through. If you're new here, my name is Brianna and I post videos every Sunday that help you become a better writer. I'm also currently in the process of building something really, really cool with my husband for you guys that I think you'll really like. I don't want to say much, but it's a beautiful free writing program that combines my academic background in creative writing and English with everything you would want in a writing platform. Right now, we're fixing bugs and preparing it for release, so stay tuned for that because it should be ready really soon. And if you can't already tell, I am super excited about this. I am using it myself and I think it's great. So I hope you guys will like it too. Okay, so let's talk about overwriting. If you tend to write long, so sprawling scenes, generous descriptions, drafts that usually come in well over genre word counts, you're what the writing community calls an overwriter. About half of all writers are. The other half are underwriters who have to add, and I already made a whole video about that, so I'll link to it at the end if you're interested. Now, I've said this before, and I'll say it again, overwriters have the better problem. You have raw material. The underwriter is staring at a skeleton trying to conjure flesh out of nothing. You've got too much clay. Too much clay is a nice problem. It's still a problem, but it's a nice one. So step 1, stop treating this like a character defect when it's actually just a revision style. Where underwriters revise by addition, you revise by subtraction. Different process, same destination. Now, the actual problem isn't that your draft is long. It's that when overwriters are told to cut, they cut the wrong layer. They open their first chapter, they start tightening sentences, they replaced she began to walk with she walked. And 40 hours later, they've managed to cut out 3,000 words, but the book still has the same fundamental problem. Because sentence level bloat and structural bloat are different diseases with the same symptom, and you have to know which one you've got. Okay, now let's move on to the 5 reasons your novel is too long and how to fix it. The first and biggest place your word count lives is in scenes that have no reason to be in the book. When you're cutting down your word count, this step comes first. Always. Because you don't want to spend an hour polishing a sentence that's inside a scene you have to delete. Every scene in your manuscript should do at least 2 of the following 3 things. Advance the plot, reveal or develop character, or build the world in a way the story requires. If a scene only does 1 out of those 3 scenes, it's likely a filler scene and you need to justify hard why you should keep it. If it does none of those 3, it's gone, no matter how good the prose is. You have to delete it. Now, the reason overwriters specifically struggle with this is because your filler scenes don't feel like filler. They feel like texture. They feel like the book breathing. And sometimes they are. But more often, what you've written is a scene where your characters discuss something that should have actually happened on the page instead. So a weak example of this could be Era and Thorn sit in an inn and talk for 11 pages about their plan to infiltrate the Citadel, their concerns about the plan, their history with the Citadel, and their feelings about each other's history with the Citadel. That's a lot of talking with little to no action keeping the readers engaged. A stronger example would cut the inn and instead open on them halfway up the Citadel wall, mid-infiltration, arguing in whispers about the plan while it's actively going wrong. You've got the same information, same character dynamic, and the same history surfacing, but now it's load-bearing. It's got tension, and it's 4 pages instead of 11. That's several pages gone in one move, and the book got both shorter and better. So when you're looking for these scenes in your own manuscript, make a scene list. Not a chapter list, a scene list. 1 line per scene and a column for each of the 3 tests. Do this for your whole book. It's tedious and it will take an afternoon, but it will show you your bloat faster than any amount of reading will, because it's so hard to see the structure while you're inside the prose. The list gets you out of the prose. That said, some scenes exist for rhythm. After a huge emotional or action climax, readers need a moment to process. That's the aftermath scene, and it can look like it fails all 3 tests when it's still doing essential work. A book that's nothing but load-bearing scenes is exhausting to read. So the question then isn't does every scene advance the plot, it's does every scene earn its page count? A scene where the characters rest has a function too. Just be honest about whether you wrote a rest scene or whether you wrote 5 pages in an inn. The second place your bloat lives is at the edges of scenes that absolutely should exist. I stole this tip from screenwriting, where they have been absolutely ruthless about this for a century. Because there's a rule of thumb that a screenplay shouldn't exceed 120 pages unless it's for like The Lord of the Rings. I think that's what I read, correct me if I'm wrong. Either way, the principle is enter late, leave early. Meaning, start the scene at the latest possible moment that makes sense, and get out at the earliest possible moment that still lands. William Goldman, the guy who wrote The Princess Bride, put it as attacking a scene as late as you possibly can. Hitchcock's version is that drama is life with the dull parts cut out. Novelists are terrible at this, and I think it's because we have no page limit forcing us to be good at it. So we write the arrival, we write the greeting, we write the character sitting down and ordering a drink. Then finally, 2 pages later, someone says the thing that the scene is actually about. And then we write the goodbye and the walk home and the reflection. Now you've written scene pages when the actual scene is 2 pages and the remaining 4 pages are just commuting and internal dialogue. So a weak example of this could say, Mara pushes open the door of the shop. A bell rings. The shopkeeper looks up and asks if she needs help. She says she's just looking. She browses the shelves, picking up a jar and putting it down. Finally, she asks, do you know a man named Julian? The shopkeeper goes very still. A stronger example could say, do you need any help? The shopkeeper greeted as Mara stepped into the shop. Yes, she browsed the shelves. Do you know a man named Julian? The shopkeeper went very still, one hand flat on the counter. Or an even shorter example could say, do you know a man named Julian? Mara browsed the shelves. The shopkeeper went very still, one hand flat on the counter. Everything before the question wasn't essential, and the beat now ends on the shopkeeper going still instead of continuing for another paragraph, because the reader doesn't need the resolution. They need the hook into the next moment. So when you're going through your manuscript, take any scene and ask yourself, what's the last moment I could have started this and still had it make sense? And then ask, what's the first moment that I could have ended it? And then just do that. This is the highest yield, lowest agony cut in the entire book, because you're almost never cutting anything anyone loves. Nobody really loves reading about a bell chiming as the door opens. Yeah, it's great for adding sensory texture, but when you're trying to cut down word count, it's a detail that can be spared, because it's not a sensory detail that's doing narrative work. Now, that said, the slow build is a real technique, but only when there's tension underneath it that's holding the reader's attention. If Mara walked in and we already knew she had a knife in her sleeve, that browsing sequence becomes a slow build, because every second she doesn't ask the question is a second of dread. Slow openings need a reason the reader is leaning forward. If there's no reason, then there's no need to go slow. The third reason your novel is too long is because of stuff that you know, but the story doesn't need. You spent 9 days researching medieval siege warfare, or falconry, or the actual chemistry of the dye trade. And now there are 2 or 3 extra pages in chapter 19 about the dye trade, and you know what? They are good pages. That's the problem, because if they were bad, you probably would have cut them already. This is the same disease as world building dumping. And fantasy and romantasy writers are especially prone to it because we build so much before we draft. The magic system has 14 rules when really the reader only needs to know 5. And those remaining 9 rules are quickly dumped into chapter 10 because you want the reader to know them. But there's no place to organically incorporate them into your story aside from explicit exposition dumps. Research is an iceberg. Hemingway's iceberg, to be specific. And I've talked about this before. The reader should feel the mass of what you know underneath the surface, but they shouldn't be told of it all in intricate detail. Your knowledge should show up as narrative confidence, in the specific right word, in the detail that you actively chose, or the thing that your character notices that only someone who knows would notice. That's the 90% of the information under the water. It's doing work, it's just not doing it out loud. So a weak example of this could be that your scene has 3 paragraphs explaining how the Dye Guild's apprenticeship system functions, its history, and its political relationship to the ground. A stronger example would be grounded in your character's perspective, with concrete, visceral details that the reader uses to infer meaning rather than being told it. So a stronger example could say, Bryn notices the man's hands, the indigo permanently sunk into the creases of his knuckles, the kind of stain that takes 20 years. She'd assumed wrongly about him, it seemed. Despite all his brass demeanor, Dye needed a particular gentle care to get right. Now the reader now infers that the dye trade is generational, that it marks people, that Bryn can read it, and that she's sharp. We also understand that there's more to the man than we see on the surface level. That's what all your research and world building is meant for. To say something about the people it affects, their emotions, motivations, fears, all that good stuff. So in your manuscript, find every passage where you're explaining rather than dramatizing it. And ask yourself, what does the reader need to feel here? And what is the smallest concrete detail that can deliver it? Then cut the explanation and keep the detail. And if you want, put the cut material in an excess document, because you'll feel better about deleting things if they're not really deleted. Now that said, genuinely complex world building sometimes does need explicit explanation. And I've got a whole video about when it's better to tell rather than show, because show don't tell is incomplete advice, and following it religiously is probably how a lot of you got to like 150,000 words in the first place. If the reader will be lost without this knowledge, tell them clearly, but in as few words as possible. Now, the fourth category is the sneakiest because it's invisible while reading your own book. Redundancy is when your manuscript makes the same point more than once. And I don't mean repeating a word. I mean you establish that Thorn doesn't trust the council in chapter 4, and then you brought it up again differently in chapter 7, and then again in chapter 12. Each instance is well written. Each one on its own is fine. But collectively, there are 8,000 words saying the same thing. So why can't you see it? Because you likely didn't write them in the same day. You wrote chapter 4 in March and then chapter 12 in August, and in between, your brain forgot that your writing session in March already handled it. Meanwhile, your reader reads them 4 hours apart and is thinking, yes, I know, you've told me this already. This happens at every level. At emotional beats, where the character has the same realization 3 times. Information, where the reader learns the rules of the magic system and then a character explains it to another character who already knows it. And micro-redundancy, where you say, she shrugged, lifting her shoulders, or he nodded his head in agreement. The action is already explaining what she's doing. She shrugged means she's lifting her shoulders. You don't have to say them both. There's also a specific version that overwriters do constantly, which is where you show it, but then you also tell it. You write a gorgeous specific beat of Anna turning away and gripping the windowsill until her knuckles go white. And then you write, she struggled to hide her anger. You did the work and then you explain the work. Just delete the caption and trust that the reader will infer that she's upset. So a weak example of this could say, I don't want to talk about it. Elijah's jaw tightened, refusing to meet her eyes. He was clearly angry and he didn't want to discuss it further. A stronger example would just cut out that last sentence. I don't want to talk about it. Elijah's jaw tightened, refusing to meet her eyes. Same scene, but the last sentence was telling the reader something the middle sentence already showed them. At that point, it's just wasted words. The fix for this is distance. At minimum, spend 2 weeks away from your manuscript, ideally more, then come back to it and read the whole thing in as few sittings as possible. Ideally on paper or in a different font if you can't print that much paper. And every time you think, wait, didn't I already? Mark it. Don't fix it, just make a note and then continue reading. Now, the caveat to this is that deliberate repetition is a technique. Those are motifs or refrains or a phrase that recurs and accrues meaning. That's a structural method, it's not redundancy. The difference is whether the repetition changes on each return. If it means something new the 3rd time, it's a motif. If it's just being retold a 3rd time, it's redundancy. And finally, the 5th reason your word count is too long is the one that isn't in your manuscript at all. Everything I've told you, you can probably feel the truth of. You might have even already thought of a specific scene or a few. So here's my question for you. Why haven't you cut it yet? There's a well-documented cognitive bias called the IKEA effect, where people place disproportionately high value on things that they built themselves. The labor creates attachment. It feeds directly into the sunk cost fallacy, which is our tendency to keep investing in something because of what we've already put into it, even when abandoning it is clearly the better call. So let's apply that to your manuscript. That scene took you 9 days. Those 9 days are gone. They are gone whether you keep the scene or cut it. But your brain refuses to process that, so it sneakily starts generating reasons the scene should stay. It's setting up something later. It's characterization. It's tonally important. So how do you tell if that's what's happening for you? You can usually spot a sunk cost defense because it's a defense of the scene's history rather than its function. If your reason is because you just love the scene, then that's honest, and it's okay to love a scene that doesn't actually serve the story. That's a darling. But if your reason is because this scene is doing subtle thematic work that pays off in Act 3, when the scene is just about a stranger fighting over tomatoes and it doesn't actually pay off in Act 3, and you otherwise can't justify it being there, then it's likely just your brain trying to justify it simply because you spend valuable time writing it. And this is why kill your darlings is such bad advice for you specifically as an overwriter. The original advice was about deleting your most self-consciously fine writing, which is a real problem, but it's usually not the overwriter's problem. Your favorite scene is often genuinely good. The bloat is in the scenes you feel neutral about. The connective tissues, the two-pagers that exist because you needed to get characters from one place to the next, the stuff that you'd never call a darling because you never loved it enough to notice it. So don't kill your darlings, kill your neutrals. And then look very hard at your darlings and ask whether they're carrying the book or the book is carrying them. For every scene you can't bring yourself to cut, write one sentence, not a paragraph, one sentence, explaining what the book loses without it. If you can't do it in one sentence, that's your answer. If the sentence is about how long it took to write or how much you like it, that's your answer. And if it genuinely earns its place, that's great. Now you know, and you can stop feeling guilty about it. Now the opposite failure is real too. Overcutting is a thing, where at some point you're not making it better, you're just making it different. And if you find yourself putting back things that you cut 3 drafts ago, you've probably crossed the line and you should stop. Take a break. So what order do you actually do all of these steps in? Because doing it out of order is usually how overwriters burn out. The first step is to distance yourself for at minimum 2 weeks because you can't see any of this from up close mentally. The second step is to make your scene list. So remove any scenes that fail the 2 out of 3 test. The third step is to enter late and leave early on every surviving scene. This is your cheapest, least painful cut. Then hunt your redundancies. Then iceberg your research and your world building. And then your 6th step is to line edit. Now you can tighten your sentences, cut your filter words, eliminate your adverbs. Now it's worth doing because every sentence you're polishing is within scenes that survived. So your novel isn't too long. It's too long in the wrong places. And now you know the 5 places to look. Thank you for watching. If you like this video, you might want to watch this one next. And tell me, what's the scene you know needs to go, and what's the excuse you've been using to keep it? Until the next chapter.